Now, the fallout from the protests outside Foreign Minister Winston Peters' Auckland home continues this morning. 1NZ says it will remove the activist who gave out his home address online from its advertising campaigns. Joining us now for our political panel this morning is ACT Party leader David Seymour, along with Marama Davidson, the Green Party co-leader. Morena, good morning, team.
Morena.
Good to have you both here. Marama, I want to start with you. What's your advice to protesters, doesn't matter what the issue is, who protesting outside a politician's personal home? What's your advice to them?
Well, peaceful protest is an important part of Aotearoa. We've got a proud history of peaceful protest, of direct action. But the issue is important here, Ryan. This is about a genocide where thousands, tens of thousands of civilians, the majority women and babies and children, are being killed, and people are feeling desperate to get some attention and to be heard. And the Greens, in the meantime, have been encouraging people to engage with their local MPs, to call, to email, to try and get a meeting, to be heard constructively, but have had silence, have been getting blocked at every avenue of engaging constructively in democracy.
So, do you then crowbar a window?
Of course not, Ryan, and we've been quite clear about that, including with you. No one's property should be damaged in that way. Absolutely not.
Okay.
And we have never, ever stood for those sorts of actions.
But in terms of actually protesting outside the house of an MP, that's legitimate in your eyes?
In the public places where protests have always taken place, we do want to preserve that. We do want to preserve people's ability to have peaceful protests.
David, do you agree with that? I mean, you're the free speech guy. You know, we've got this activist being sort of cancelled from 1NZ. You've also got protests outside, you know, freedom of assembly and association outside someone's house. Where do you stand?
Well, I support people's right to protest, of course you should, and I support free speech. But you also have to ask yourself what you're achieving by going and interrupting a neighbourhood, a whole lot of people with children, their pets next door. Is that actually winning people over to the cause? And I suspect one of the reasons that some of these people are so frustrated is that they've lost the room. People are tired of their petulant protests as though their view of the world is so important that it has to be rubbed in anyone else's face. They seem to believe they're going to achieve peace and democracy in the Middle East by destroying our democratic norms here, even just basic respect and civility for others. They think that can go out the window because their beliefs are right. And I think they need to ask themselves, why aren't they persuading anyone? I mean, we all know what's happening in the Middle East is terrible. There's no question about that. But it's not as simple as I'm right, and therefore I'm allowed to take away others' rights.
There's an interesting thing that's happening here that's come out of this debate, I think, in that, Marama, I know you guys have spoken a lot about, on the right, you know, political leadership and words matter, and if you speak a certain way or you give voice to a certain opinion, then it can lead to, quote you guys, real-world violence. And on the other hand, the right has sort of typically said that's a stretch too far, we're just expressing our opinions. The whole thing's been muddled because, you know, it's happening on the left. So where do we stand? Is what a politician says important and influential, and do you need to be more careful with what you say, Marama?
All politicians too, Ryan, and we have seen one of our own politicians basically being bullied and harassed and violently threatened out of Parliament directly because of politicians' words. Absolutely, we all need to be aware of what we are drumming up and supporting in this political environment. Let's not have memory loss and say that this is the left only. Let's never forget the incredible harassment, even just as recent as Jacinda Ardern, myself and others in the Green Party. We had James Shaw attacked from a drumming up of conspiracy theory. Let's just be really clear, we all have a responsibility as politicians to be aware of the power of our words.
David, do you agree with that?
Look, to be really honest, we could go back and forth on this and talk about the Greens' apparent inconsistency here. People will judge that for themselves. But you know what, Ryan? I think a lot of people in New Zealand are sitting there saying, what makes a much bigger difference to me is what's the Reserve Bank going to do today, and is the official cash rate going to come down? Because since this government's been in place, we've been restraining our spending. When the government wastes less, frankly, the people eat more. And over the last 2 years, you've seen an average mortgage, your payments have come down nearly $400 a fortnight. That means more cash in the economy. It means in the case of landlords' mortgages, rents come down. Life becomes more affordable because there's a whole lot of people out there who are looking at this whole issue and they're saying, actually, when a politician's going to be able to focus on issues that matter to us where we can actually make a difference, rather than stirring up and drumming up all sorts of craziness around something on the other side of the world, forcing other politicians to respond to that instead of the things we can actually influence for New Zealanders.
Can I get that as a guarantee from you this morning then that you will talk about nothing but the economy until the election, David?
No, but it's a guarantee that we're focused on fixing what matters. Right. So I've just stood here for 2 or 3 minutes, probably 5 actually, politely listening to an issue that these guys have created. When in actual fact, what we need to be doing is working out how we fix the aspects of the economy that affect New Zealanders every day.
School attendance, Marama, this ERO report that's come out, which we were reading earlier this morning, shows that there are more kids attending school, which is great, and actually more kids who are excited or think it's important to be going to school, something they're not doing in Gaza right now, so we should be lucky and encouraging them to do so, right? So what do you make of that? What do you put that down to? You know, do you have to give some credit to the focus that's been put on this attendance issue?
I just firstly want to be really clear, the Greens absolutely did not create the genocide that David is, attributing to us. And yes, it is good when children's truancy, when children can increase their attendance. I'd really like us to focus on some of the biggest levers that research for decades and decades has been really clear would make the biggest impact on attendance: addressing homelessness, addressing poverty. Principals, teachers and families have told us for a long time that those would make some of the biggest impacts. And in my South Auckland communities, and just recently with the youth parliament that was here, we were hearing from young people talking about their friends, colleagues and family members who are still having to go to work and miss school to be in paid employment to support their families. So it's good to see that since 2022, attendance has been improving. I'd really like us to take the next step and have a whole of government understanding as to how we can make the biggest difference for tamariki going to kura.
David, this is not the only area in government, but that ministers have responsibility for. But it's another one where it seems like if you just put a spotlight on it, put a focus on it, you can actually achieve not massive gains, but you can incrementally make change.
Yeah, look, there's a massive bounce back going on in school attendance, and that really matters to New Zealand because the number one thing that will determine our long-term future today is how many children actually go to school. Because an educated population, they can solve whatever problems they face in their time on earth. An uneducated population can squander a society's prosperity. So this really matters, and we are fixing it. If you look at what really drives school attendance, I mean, yes, poverty is an issue, but respectfully, that was an issue 3 years ago. What this report from ERO today shows, something that we've commissioned and seen 15,000 people interviewed and surveyed to find out what's going on out there, is the school's attitude, the students' attitude and the parents' attitude towards attendance. Now, all of those things have significantly improved. People think it's more important to go to school, and that means they're more likely to overcome whatever barriers they face. Meanwhile, the government is coming in with a $140 million additional package for attendance services. I looked at the attendance service. It wasn't working in many areas. We cancelled all the existing contracts. We've restructured it. We've made sure that we've got good and effective attendance services that principals and deans and attendance officers can call on.
We spoke
all
about
up
that
and
yesterday.
down the country. That's what's making a difference.
There are big fingers crossed for that too. Let's hope it works out. Marama and David, thank you so much for being with me this morning.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Good to see you both. That's Marama Davidson from the Greens and David Seymour from ACT.